Welcome to You, Me, Empathy, a safe place for leading with your heart. Hey, thanks for being here. You, Me, Empathy is the official podcast of the Feely Human Collective, a collaborative mental health community designed to empower each of us to grow our capacity for empathy, vulnerability, and emotional wayfinding. Just a friendly reminder that this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. No one is just a silly boy with a feely heart. You can support the show by leaving a review in Apple Podcasts, following us on social media at Yumi Empathy and Feely Human, and joining the Feely Human Collective community at feelyhuman.co. And now your host, Known Wells.
Hello, Feely Humans. Welcome to another episode of You, Me, Empathy. My name is Known Wells. This is episode 155 on the healing power of palm reading with my guest, Helene Saucedo. In this episode, Helene and I explore the stigma of spiritual practices like palm reading, Helene's journey of divorcing her husband and coming out as queer, how big risks can sometimes look like a midlife crisis, and the history, beauty, and healing power of palm reading. I really love this conversation. I know nothing about palm reading, although I know a little bit now, thanks to my conversation with Helene. Fascinating story, wonderful human, really enjoyed jumping into this heart first, this conversation. And I think you'll love it too. Before we get to the episode, though, I wanted to remind you to please leave a rating and review for Yumi Empathy in Apple Podcasts. Really, it's a free way to support the show, and this podcast I've been doing for 3 years now. And it's a weekly show that you get to listen to for free, and I would appreciate any feedback and 5-star reviews in Apple Podcasts. Thank you for doing that. If you want to support me and the work I do on an ongoing basis financially, you can do so at patreon.com/feelyhuman. That's patreon.com/feelyhuman. You can get bonus episodes of this podcast every month, bonus Zoom chats. The first Zoom chat actually is today, for the $10 and up patrons. We're talking about advocacy work in a time of a lot of division and, just being in a divided world. So yeah, over at patreon.com/feelyhuman, you get bonus Zooms and other fun goodies. Check it out. Again, that's patreon.com/feelyhuman. And over at Feely Human, we're always looking for writers and collaborators and workshop leaders. So go check out feelyhuman.co and check out the collaboration opportunities there. And through the rest of this month, the shop at feelyhuman.co/shop is 20% off. So if you're looking for a fun shirt, a cute pin, some stickers, a couple of wonderful art collabs, including an empathy zine and a sticker from Bella. The empathy zines from Chloe. Check those out at feelyhuman.co/shop. Use code FEELY20, that's FEELY 20, to get 20% off for this month only. So check that out. That's a great way to support me, and you get some fun goodies in the process. Okay. The last thing I'll say is, I guess, if you are following this podcast, You, Me, Empathy, or Feely Human, or in any of the groups for Feely Human on Facebook, I have decided to delete my Facebook account. It's something that hasn't given me a lot of joy over the years, and as I think through like some of my goals for 2021 and what I want to do and all of that, it's just not part of that equation. And so if you're following me there, you're not following me on Instagram at YouMeEmpathy, at FeelyHuman, make sure to do that. And sign up for the newsletter is a great way to keep in touch every month at feelyhuman.co. Take my workshop, all of that stuff. I really just want to foster and grow the site, feelyhuman.co, and really do more creative collaborations and things in the new year. So that's where my head's at. No more Facebook in, I guess, a couple of days from now is when I'm going to delete it. So yeah, make sure to follow me on the other places. Okay, I think I'll leave it at that. Please enjoy this wonderful episode with the wonderful, can't say that word, wonderful Helene Saucedo on the healing power of palm reading. Welcome to You, Me, Empathy, the official podcast of the Feely Human Collective. On this show, we explore the struggles, the triumphs, the brights and the darks we face as humans trying to get by on this wondrous and overwhelming pale blue dot. The intent of You, Me, Empathy is to talk openly, without judgment, about our mental health, our neuroses, our shared anxieties and worries, to create a dialogue that is vulnerable and deeply human and empathetic, and to share that dialogue with others to inspire emotional and cognitive collaboration and insight so we can, hand in hand, break down the stigma that make us feel shame and guilt for struggling, for feeling our feelings, for being feely humans. Yumi Empathy is a safe, friendly space designed to inspire the beauty in each of us. Today, I'm having a total eclipse of the heart because I'm here with palm reader, artist, and author of the book, Handful of Stars. It's Helene Saucedo. Hello, Helene.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. That total eclipse of the heart reference is just because I love that song by Bonnie Tyler.
Yes.
She's the best.
Yes, but I really enjoyed the hand in hand pun. That probably isn't something you say all the time. Well, you probably do say it all the time when you're opening, but I just think it's pretty relevant to, our topic of conversation and what I do.
That is true. Actually, it is that intro, aside from your specific piece of it, is part of the intro all of the time. And you're right. I didn't even think about that. It does work here.
Right. As a palm reader, I welcome all the hand puns.
All of the hand puns. So, Helene, I'm excited because I don't know anything about palm reading. It's something I really don't have any reference points for, but I do remember there might have been a character from the 1980s animated classic DuckTales in which maybe there was a character, a villain perhaps, that did palm reading. And it's so funny that I'm just like thinking this on the fly. It's so funny that she was a villain because like maybe there's like palm reading is evil and the dark arts or whatever, but
right.
That's my reference point.
Exactly. And like, what if they're all ducks, what is she reading? But anyways, yes. So my
right. Where are they flying next?
So my company is called, or my small business is called Handful of Stars, because I really come from the lighter side of it. Because the greatest misconception for me as a palm reader is that I'm going to give people these dark prophecies, and tell them when they're going to die or that they're going to, get sick or whatever. There's all this negativity to palm reading, and that is exactly the opposite of my intention and my style. I'm really looking for the light and empowerment and just connection with people. And so the way that I've only been doing it for about 3 years now, but it has been the most rewarding job because I just get to hold people's hands and like just do what you do, talk about real stuff. Like, there's no, hey, how's the weather? It's like, oh, hey, tell me, what does this mean to you? And just diving into, deep, usually spiritual conversations.
Yeah. No, I like that you related. I mean, I appreciate and I appreciate the sort of comparison to kind of like what I'm doing here with this podcast, and I don't take that lightly. I think that's a thing that I think I've been thinking about this concept lately. I wonder if you can relate. Just this idea that like this work is human work, right? The idea
Uh-huh.
that like I think we sometimes feel like we need to be these like professionals in with doctorates and like to like be able to talk about mental health or to talk about deep spiritual things or whatever. um I feel like that's human work regardless, like lived experience and stuff like those are important elements to healing and connection and relating and empathy and all those things, and it's all powers that we can all sort of hold,
Oh, absolutely. Every once in a while, I feel like silly. If I sit on an airplane and, someone says, what do you do? Palm reader is not, I'm not like brushing off my shoulders like, I'm a palm reader. Sometimes I think about going into like social work or like counseling or therapy, like something that, seems a little more professional because actually I do have a fairly successful background as an art director. So,
Mm,
this has been a real turn for me. Um, but I don't feel like that's necessary. I feel like my human experience is what allows me to connect with people, and my ability for empathy is my superpower in what I do. And it's just holding space. Like that's what I'm just a professional holder of space. I'm here to see people and be like, oh yeah, I fuck up too, and yeah, that's happened to me, or I'm not judging you for what you've gone through. And people really just like to feel seen and heard and not judged in that conversation. So, I really do understand what you've created here and really have a lot of respect for it.
yeah, thank you. What you said there, what struck me as interesting, and at the first part of what you said was, you know, that it's like I feel like there still is like you said like palm reading. It's not a thing like it's a thing obviously, but it's like it's not something to like to be like proud of or whatever. But like we have, I think societally, like there's this thing where it's just like we take certain, I don't know, jobs in society as like more serious
Oh,
or
sure.
whatever. And I think that like shedding that is important because, you know, that framework, normally, like I don't, but normally when someone looks at, and you could tell me a bit more about this, but looks at something like palm reading or, astrology, things like that, as like, oh, that's just like silliness or child's play. And like, what seriously is like, or what's a serious job is like a lawyer or a businessman or whatever. Like, and these are just outdated frames of thinking.
Absolutely. And it's so interesting that I'm talking to you today from like my father's desk because I feel like I spent most of my life really trying to impress him because he was a CFO and, just very corporate. And I was
Mm,
always kind of a little strange weirdo, I was super goth growing up in high school. And, but I still wanted to find a way to, kind of like fit in or make him proud. So, I eventually ended up going to school for graphic design. I graduated from Savannah College of Art and Design, and I worked my way up from like I worked for Cartoon Network Latin America, and I was associate art director at Steve Madden Shoes. And my last job that I had was art director of advertising and promotion at Macmillan Publishers, which is inside the Flatiron Building. And so
wow.
I'm like, yes, come visit me in New York City, Dad. I've made it. But like
You had like
you
pointy shoes and like
oh no.
pantsuits and stuff.
Oh no, it wasn't even like that, but it's just like on paper, like it
Yeah.
doesn't look any better. But I was absolutely miserable. I was having panic attacks going to work every day, and that's what started, my own mental health journey with medication and things like that. It really was to cope with the just trying to get to work. Um, And now looking back on that, I kind of see that as my body saying, like, you're not built for this, like just my whole nervous system was like, don't, why are you even going here? This isn't for you. Um, Not that I regret any of that journey, because I absolutely believe that, in hindsight 2020, everything that I've done has brought me to where I am now, which is, it just feels like it feels like I'm in alignment. Like I'm here right now doing what I'm supposed to be doing, which is using, that sensitivity and empathy to connect with people. And, I got a book deal. My book came out a year ago, and that was nothing I ever thought was going to happen to me. So
Yeah, that's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
Yeah, that's so cool. I mean, I like this idea about alignment,
yes,
and I think about it a lot. It is something, though, that takes a great deal of curiosity and willingness to be uncomfortable and willingness to figure out what the hell we need to be aligned with for ourselves, our bodies, our minds, all of it, and
right.
it takes work. I'm curious for you, Helene, like what tell me a little bit about like the person you were during that period before you had your kind of wake up call, and
Sure.
what sort of I don't know,
Yeah.
what inspired you, like what was going on there?
Yeah. So there's a much deeper story to all of that. I think I was just again trying to make my father proud. So when I went to school for design, I, met a man and got married and was just checking all the boxes. So I got pregnant when I was working at Macmillan Publishers, and like I said, I was miserable. So I kind of took that as a good reason to leave. And I came back to Atlanta, Georgia, where I live now, and I had a baby, and I had a very traumatic delivery. And it's actually really interesting. It's a total eclipse of the heart because um, one a year after I had my child, there was that full solar eclipse. I don't know if you remember the one. It was September 2017. Everybody went out and got the glasses.
Yes, it's
Yes.
when our orange dot of a president looked into the sun.
Exactly. Um, and something about that woke me up, and I kind of looked around at where I was and who I was kind of pretending to be in order to make other people happy. And I ended up, I had terrible postpartum depression, probably PTSD from my delivery. And
Hmm.
I ended up leaving my husband, coming out as queer, and deciding never to go back to design, as a full-time gig. I bought a vintage camper so that I wouldn't have the fear of being homeless, because I had been relying on, my husband at the time's paycheck to get by. So that was a huge kind of eat, pray, love year for me. I really changed everything. I took the biggest risks I've ever taken in my life. Made decisions that, probably look like midlife crisis from the outside, but I have deemed it my midlife correction,
Hmm.
um, because the camper ended up becoming a tool for my palm reading. And, the palm reading thing really came out of me not knowing what I was going to do, how I was going to make my money, how I was going to have, a situation that was flexible enough to take care of my child and be a single mom. Um, yeah, so it was happenstance. I was just getting my hair done when I had this idea, because I love New Orleans and I also love, the metaphysical community. And I was kind of thinking with this marketing brain of, what is not out there right now? What aren't we seeing? Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, palm reading kind of just dropped in. And the first time I did it was Christmas of 2017, and I was just dared by my friend to do it at a pop up. And so I was studying all these big nerdy books that are very they're very sumptuous. Like they just want to tell you who you are,
Hmm.
and usually in a
Yeah.
very negative way. And they really look into every part of your hand to just kind of tear you apart. And I wasn't feeling very good about that. So I created this cheat sheet for me, to guide me through a palm reading that were only going to highlight the pieces I thought were important for people to like self-reflect and have some personal growth from. And I would ink their hands onto this sheet and read it in this kind of formula. And that's what my became my book, because people, just the process of inking your hand. First of all, I feel like the people just smile and they have so much fun with it. It makes you feel like a kid again. And then me kind of visually breaking down these different pieces, explaining who you are. And I did it in a way that wasn't, telling them, like,
Yeah.
this isn't concrete. I'm not telling you this is exactly who you are and what you've been, but like, does this make sense to you? And just kind of like asking questions and talking about it. And I just saw that people were really, enjoying that and growing from it.
I really love that. And I'm so grateful to hear that, you came through those, pretty traumatic experiences and are doing something now that fills your heart. Like, that's a beautiful thing. But I do want to jump back again, because like you mentioned Eat, Pray, Love. Like, there's a lot that you experience, like some huge life changes, right? I am so curious about like how did, like, what sort of, what are the components of like being in a marriage with a heterosexual man and a hetero marriage, and then coming out as queer after that? Like what
Right. Yeah, there's definitely a lot more to that than just,
let's
it's
unpack
not that
that.
easy.
Yeah, because like, how old were you when you came out?
Oh gosh, I was like 30, it was 2 years ago, like 38, and now I'm
Yeah,
40, like really
yeah,
late in life. So
right.
I'd always identified since I was a teenager as bisexual, but I don't think I ever again. I was just trying to make other people happy. I was really
Mm,
scared. I did have relationships um, with females, but the ones that I always stuck in, for the longer haul were males. I think just because it was this, like, I felt safer. I wasn't having to rock the boat, and I was, living in a lot of fear of the, patriarchal, people in my life. So,
was that the environment you grew up in? Was it
oh, for sure, my mom was a big.
anti-gay? And
Oh yeah, my family's from Richmond, Virginia, very, very southern. My
mm,
parents are still married. My mother was a stay-at-home mom. My dad did the corporate thing. I had a beautiful childhood in California. Like, it was kind of, quote unquote, the American dream. So I think I'd always been more creative. And like I said, I was really goth and like, but there's still this piece to me that wanted to please.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
So you hid part of yourself in that process of that.
for sure, or I didn't allow myself to explore, a piece of myself in a larger way. And I
Yeah.
think it got to the point, you know, when you're talking about sexuality, of course, you're talking about sex. And it got to the point where, I mean, to be blunt, sex with a man was not something I wanted to do anymore. And
Yeah.
I really feel like coming through, also having that traumatic delivery, which, for anybody that's listening, moms or whatever, fourth degree tear is pretty serious, and that's a whole kind of, sexual situation as well. Um, and when you get really dark into depression, um, and you start to come through it, and there is this, like, there, you really want to find that light, and hold on to
Mm,
it and grow. It's almost like you get a new lease on life. So when I started to see that light again coming through my postpartum depression, I really was like, stop living your life for other people. It's so not worth it. After what you've been through, you deserve it. You deserve to honor yourself and what you want in life by making these changes and saying, you know what, I've lived half my life to make you happy. Now it's my turn, and I have a hard time not regretting, like I have a lot of regrets, I think. Like, what would have happened if I would have come out 20 years ago,
right. Right.
But we'll never know. I'm just really proud of myself for doing it now, because if you think of, the LGBT community, even just 20 years ago, there was a lot of people who lived and died in the closet, you know?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'd imagine it's still happening, right? And
Oh,
there's a
yeah.
tremendous amount of work to do on that front. And I am very proud of you for going through that and making that choice. Like that is um, so self-honoring and beautiful.
Well, and the best part of it, and I just got the chills, the best part of it is that when I honored that part of myself, that's when I really found an alignment in just my whole life. That's when everything kind of fell into place in terms of, I got this book deal 3 months after I started palm reading. And
Wow.
I had worked on the other side of publishing. I was the advertising designer. I never in my life thought I was going to have a book deal. And the way that it happened was I was just getting these ideas and I was following these thoughts that I was having. So I'm like, I had this idea of like, nobody's doing palm reading this way. You've designed something. Why don't you just even see if it's possible to like make this into something? And so I just sent an email to an editor I knew and I said, I don't want any favors. I just want to know if this is any kind of a good idea. And I mean, he immediately sent me to one of the best agents in, the spiritual community. And it was just like, bam, 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 here and then I was like, okay, guess I'm really a palm reader now. But just to say, like, the reason I love that story so much is because it inspires people. And so when I do readings and people are usually coming to me in a very vulnerable situation in which they're stuck. They don't know where to go. I'm like, hey, I know exactly where you're at, and this is, how I handled it, and I'm all right. And sometimes people just need to know, you know,
Hmm.
you're not the only one, or they're
Yep.
just looking for like a little breadcrumb to like get them that little next step on
Right.
their path, or just to know that it's okay to change. You know.
We gotta change. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I hear your story and I get goosebumps too because I feel, you know, what strikes me as so wonderful and it's so human is this idea of coming into ourselves and learning about like who we are, and that's a work, that's an effort that not all of us take, and so I went through a period of life where you know I I grew up in an environment that felt very like the opposite of who I wanted to be, and I felt very like you, like I felt like I had to hide, or I felt like I didn't have the safety to really explore those things. And now I'm 39, so I'm close to your age. Like I'm
Yeah.
at a point where I started going to therapy and really exploring these things, and now I'm doing the podcast and Feel Human, and all these things are coming to fruition because I am doing the work of knowing myself. And um, like for you, Helene, and for the listeners, like the work of knowing yourself it's not selfish. It's honoring. It's beautiful. The more we know ourselves, the more we can really explore that and get to know like what lights us up and what fulfills us. Like our relationships are more enriching. Our life is just more fruitful because of
And
that
that
process.
right.
Yeah.
And that radiates outwards. And what I
Yep.
probably think is true for you too is that even though I look at myself as someone who does healing work, I feel like I'm being healed, at the same amount that anyone I'm talking to is. In fact, there's a lot of times I do readings and I'm like, oh gosh, I should be paying you. Like you just brought me a message that I needed to hear,
Yep. Yep. I feel that all the time.
Uh-huh.
I mean, that's the beauty of connection, right? If we're
Oh
coming
yeah.
into a situation like you and I are now, and we're present and we're staying open, and allowing others, allowing you to show up as you are, allowing me to show up as I am. There's so much exchange in that, and it's mutually beneficial.
Yeah, I'm gonna have a high from this conversation probably for a couple hours after we talk, and I love that. But I also want to say, even though our stories are inspirational and they feel really good for people to hear, it's not it's not always perfect just because you found alignment.
Yeah.
You're still on a journey, and there's still crazy ups and downs. I thought that just because I had a book come out, I was like, that's it. I'm perfect. And now I'm like, I feel like I'm right back on that journey again. Like, okay, now what? I have to figure this all out again. But honestly, that is for me, it's kind of the fun part in life because I need that movement. I can't just do going to the same office, all day, every day. That's just not in my blood. So even though it brings me great anxiety to live this kind of spiritual artist life, um, I do find some reward in trying to figure it all out.
Well, I think I think there's a couple, like, you're obviously moving, like the movement piece of it is like you're in a camper and there's literal movement, but also there's the movement of like, we have to keep moving as humans. And I don't
Right.
mean like physically, I mean emotionally and spiritually. We have
Right.
to keep stoking those fires of curiosity. Otherwise, we're not going to do that work. We're not going to figure out like where we need
Right.
to go and why we need to go there,
Yeah, and for me, there's no real destination. I feel like
Exactly.
a lot of us are
Yeah.
trying to head so fast to get to some perfect place in life where everything is exactly as it should be, but I don't think that place exists.
No, it doesn't. It's not.
Yeah.
That's the trap of, capitalism or whatever you want to call it.
Hmm.
Like there is no end goal. It's movement.
Right.
It's flexibility. It's presence.
Exactly.
Yeah. I'm I'm very curious, like how did your ex-husband take that?
Not well.
Like, okay.
Yes, and we co-parent now, and that is a whole other series of challenges because I think that's a hurt that is going to hurt him for a long time, and
Yeah.
and that's also very hard on me because again, I am very empathetic. I get it. I actually just went through a huge heartbreak, and the part of me is like, man, was that karma for breaking his heart? That
Mm,
aside,
mm,
yeah, that it was a hard hit for
yeah.
him, but it was hard on me as well because I also had the responsibility of being a parent. And when we separated, my daughter was 2, and I changed her whole trajectory. But then I had to look at it from a mother's perspective and be like, well, what kind of mother do I want to be? Like, what kind of role model would I want her to stay in an unhappy situation to make other people happy? Um,
I
so
think that's
I
tremendous insight. Yeah.
Oh yeah, for sure. And she is on her own journey. Like children are a whole other podcast. Like they're the spirits on their own journey. We can mold and mother and all that as much as we want, but at the end of the day, you've also got to give them a lot of space to do their own thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
How did your parents take you coming out?
Um so first of all, the divorce, let me tell you that I did not tell them until 3 months after we were divorced because I was just they're very anxious. I think honestly that's where my anxiety comes from,
Mm,
because I am diagnosed generalized depression and anxiety. So
yep.
I just didn't want to rock their worlds too much. So when I came out, it was because I realized that National Coming Out Day was the same day as like National Mental Health Day. And I was
Mm,
like, oh, that's quite the link there. So
serendipitous.
yes, I really feel like if I don't do this, I felt like it kind of was a sign, like I need to do this in order to, really take care of myself and just be like, hey, if you guys care about my life and my mental health, this is just the way things are. And I did it in an email,
Mm,
and again, I just knew that my dad needs kind of like me, he needs some time to process things. And so I did that in a way that would give him the time and space. And my mother said, duh. Which gives some very different reactions.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
Was it
Now,
a supportive duh? Like, yeah,
yes,
duh, kiddo.
it was a supportive duh. But also she was worried about, more about his reaction. So
Mm,
I haven't brought a partner home yet.
mm,
that will be a whole other level of, reality sinking in for them. But hopefully soon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't it wild that there's the old guard of people like our parents, right? Who, grew up in these times where, homosexuality was a sin or it's evil or whatever. And there are still people like that today, who are not old guard, but it is wild to think that, that kind of mindset and prejudice and
Mm-hmm.
can exist even in the people that we love.
Oh, yes. But I think that makes it even more important to show who you are, because then, those
Indeed.
people realize these are people that I love, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have this eat, pray, love moment. You come out as queer, you divorce your husband, you have very traumatic childbirth. Tell me a little bit about like how the co-parenting is with like you on this sort of like wayward artist journey and kids in tow and how that works.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're just very different people now. Even though we met in art school, um, he has worked his way up the kind of advertising corporate ladder, and I've gone the other way. Now I'm the gay palm reader with the camper, and it's a really tough push and pull, because
Mm.
he cares about other things. She's almost 5 years old, but he's really focused on like learning and development, and I mean, of course I am too, but I'm more focused on play and connection between us, because I feel like her emotional journey, she's really just coming to terms with, maybe not everybody has two homes, and things like that. I have to think
Yeah.
about coming out to her eventually, or explaining to her at least. So we just have very different perspectives, and sometimes we are not, we're not our best selves, to put it
Yeah.
lightly. Um, and and that is going to be something that it's to navigate for the rest of our lives. And I am optimistic that eventually things will shake out, but for now we try to keep a business, and we try to keep boundaries, and we're humans. We make mistakes. We say things we shouldn't. But you just have to keep moving forward, and trust that you both have our kids' best intentions in
Yeah.
mind.
You know, you mentioned play. I'm curious, like how your sort of your journey and your life and your art and the way the way you live, your person, how that relates to your parenting, like how it informs your parenting. I'm curious of like other aspects of like your self sort of plays into that
Mm-hmm.
parenting piece.
Sure. Well, she definitely has tarot cards. She has like animal spirit tarot cards and like unicorns, but they have like, positive affirmations. So I am just so intuitive, and that can be a blessing and a curse, because
Sure.
sometimes I do wish I was more structured in terms, we have to do school now, this virtual pre-K, which seems ridiculous. And we don't always do the homework. I'm not going to lie. Sometimes I'm like, we're going to go for a walk. But I just don't feel like at this point in time that's that important, because, they say to keep your kids off screens. But right now, she's on a screen for 5 hours a day doing virtual pre-K. So, I think it's interesting to see how that's going to go when she goes to real school, because I was
Yeah.
actually I was an A student, I was an overachiever. But I also think it's interesting. I like to look at my child through the lens of astrology. I think that that's very supportive,
Hmm.
uh, because it really explains a lot of who she is and her behavior. So
How so?
for anybody who's into astrology, she is a Scorpio sun, Leo rising, Aries moon. So Scorpio is like the most feared water sign. It's like the darkest, most emotional, kind of manipulative, Leos are like, look at me, see me, hear me. And then the Aries are like very passionate, bold. So she just has all these like strongest elements in astrology. And she has been a fireball ever since she was born. I mean, just starting from delivery. So just having that lens of like, okay, she's having a tantrum and, she can be very manipulative. She really likes her daddy, and so a lot of times when she's with me, she's like, "I want daddy," or "I don't love you anymore," and things like that. And
Mm.
I know she doesn't mean those things, truly. But again, like the lens of astrology, I'm like, okay, that's just some Scorpio stuff right there. Like you,
Yeah. Yeah.
almost like my defense mechanism.
Right.
And there's crystals under her bed, and I'll spray her with some sage spray if she's crazy. So I definitely operate a witchy household, but again, I really feel like I deal with her intuitively, where he reads a lot of books, So when we were potty training her, and you can edit this out, this bores the crap out of people, but when we were potty training her, he read this book and bought it for me called like Potty Training in 3 Days. Um, we've been potty training now for 3 years. So that's where I feel like our difference is. I'm not one to like force and put her in a box because I know she's not going to she doesn't belong in a box.
Right.
Yeah, she's going to do it on her own time, and we might have to try some things that aren't necessarily, what the doctors are going to say. She's also developmentally delayed, so there is some, work we have to do with her in that way.
Yeah. I mean, I hear you talk. I mean, like, parenting has got to be. I'm not a parent, but it's got to be the hardest job on the planet, And I think about my wife, who is a college English teacher, and just like any educator, right? Like, I think about how I think this is an important lens through which to look at like mental health, which is like everybody is truly unique, and yet I get that there are tools and mindsets and books and frames of thinking that like want to put us into boxes because that's easier, and we have to have some sort of framework. But like,
right.
I also get the other piece of it where, I was raised with kind of strict parents, but they were also like gone a lot. And so I was gone a lot, and they allowed me to do a lot of crazy things that maybe I shouldn't have done, but because I was gone all day, like that kind of thing. Like there's a certain piece of that I value, right? That like freedom and like wildling part of like what childhood could be, But I also understand that like, hey, maybe there does need to be some structure at times, and like it's just a hard thing to balance.
And I do the balance. I think is the key word, though, especially with me and my ex-husband. I feel like she's going to get the balance. She's going to have, the intense structure from him, and then she's going to have more of the free flowing from me. And then you know what? Eventually, that might change. We'll see. You never know. But talking about mental health in children, it's a very interesting time because I don't know how many times people have told me that my child was going to be autistic. She even got moved out of a school because they were like, she might have Asperger's. I feel like there's this hypersensitivity to diagnose kids that might just be a little weird. And, a mother's intuition, I think a mother's intuition is the most important thing. For instance, she had a bad fall and we took her to the hospital, and the nurses are like, well, we could run all these tests on her, which, there's risk to them, or we could just ask you, like, do you think she's okay? And I was like, yes, I absolutely think she's okay. And they're like, okay, then you can go. Those nurses trusted what I felt over, having to run all these tests. So I think that's kind of cool that intuition is taken seriously within the medical field to some degree.
Wow. Yeah, that is cool. I didn't, you'd think that wouldn't happen. You'd think that they'd want to run all the tests, but yeah, that's great. That's great to hear.
Yeah.
How you mentioned before, I'm going to jump back in time a little bit. Like,
sure.
being a student, perfectionism, what was your childhood like? You mentioned it was great. Like what
Yeah.
kind of childhood did you have?
I grew up in LA, in a little suburb in LA called Roland Heights, and it was kind of picture perfect. My mom did Girl Scouts, and I took dance lessons. I actually danced for half of my life. That was what I was, quote unquote, like supposed to be when I grew up.
What kind of dance?
All dance, ballet,
Okay.
tap, jazz. Yeah, and again, I think it was just the creativity and the intuition that is still present in what I do today and in a physical form. So
Hmm.
so yeah, it was beautiful, but I will say that I lived down the street from my elementary school, and I think the first time looking back that I knew I had anxiety or that I was a little bit different was I would run home from kindergarten if I like forgot my homework or something. I would just run
Hmm.
home. I'd get in trouble for that all the time because it was like fight or flight, and that I
So you
I'm still
forgot
that.
your homework at home?
Well, I mean, I would if something happened, like I think I didn't do my homework, but it was an honest mistake, and I didn't know how to deal with that, so I just ran home.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, that
sure.
kind of thing. And that has happened. That's something I look at as an adult too, like this fight or flight thing. Um, but yeah, I mean, I had a really supportive mom, and she believes in ghosts and aliens and things like that. So she's she's taught me by black tutus when I was goth girl, and she's into what I do. I've read her poems.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I so how does the do you still battle with the perfectionism today?
Oh my gosh, so much. Like every day, and I feel like that's any kind of artist battle, you know?
Hmm.
Like you're like every day it's like a nervous breakdown. Am I supposed to be doing this or should I just quit, Um
Hmm. So
yeah.
it's more connected to like your purpose and like what you're doing. It's less about like the output.
It's about, I mean, even like Instagram,
Hmm.
I feel like Instagram is a very interesting medium right now because you're putting yourself out there. People are looking, they're judging. Um, and yeah, I think it is about output. I do, want to do well, and I wouldn't say I'm type A, but I am hypercritical. Anybody who knows me is like, Helene, you are so hard on yourself.
Hmm.
Um, but I do believe that's from, again, um, you know, just childhood, growing up, parenting, being held to, high standards, having, that corporate America, father it was a lot to, kind of have pressure to live up to. And my younger sister actually has, pretty serious developmental disabilities. And, I don't know. I always felt like I was the one who had to step up.
Hmm. If you, in your mind, looking back, if you hadn't stepped up, what were the repercussions?
Um, just not. I mean, that's an interesting. I feel like we're having a therapy session right now because I'm like, what would be the repercussions? Like, just it's just pressure. Even now, there's pressure.
I mean, this is pressure you're putting on yourself.
No, it's like I get sent uh, just job, like corporate jobs, and I'm like, oh no, like I'd rather kill myself than do that, or
Hmm.
just anything with that.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, just this pressure to do the thing that somebody else thinks you should do, and it's constantly kind of giving the middle finger to that. But then you don't want to fail because you know then you look or feel like, oh, you were right. So I guess it's that you right or wrong kind of thing that gets to
Hmm.
me.
Hmm. I mean, Helene, you went through a long period of time where you were not exploring you weren't in alignment, as you put it. You weren't in alignment, and so you haven't had a ton of time in your life where you were doing the things that you felt aligned to do and that fill your heart, and so it makes sense that there would continue to be some of this pressure and perfectionism and all those sorts of things. So, I would just say to you, like, be a little kinder to yourself.
Oh yeah.
Also remember that, people are always going to criticize and have opinions. And the great thing is that we don't need to listen to them. We can,
Right.
and that feels
Yeah.
great.
Yeah, right. And it's interesting because I've always been very, expressive outwardly in terms of my appearance. So like, I've always had brightly colored hair and wearing interesting outfits. But then I'm like, why are you looking at me? But I have positive affirmations all over my house that are like, give yourself grace. And again, the work that I do, I feel like I'm giving so much empathy to other people that it's like, you really need to give this back to you too. So it is that, like, why can you hold this person in such, non-judgment, and then you come down on yourself? So I feel like it's a constant reminder to me as well.
I think that is such a universal challenge for people like us, people who are empaths and are, in these helping fields and who do get a lot of value out of, like, giving ourselves. But the key is the balance. The key is the boundaries. The key is to remember that, we can't pour from an empty cup, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I'm very curious, like, as someone whose palm reading knowledge is couched in 1980s animated classics,
DuckTales.
DuckTales, woohoo. What do you have do you have some knowledge about, like, the history of palm reading and, like, how it started?
Oh yeah, and you know what? They really can't track down like the first time that there was palm reading. There's in the beginning of my book, there's a piece about the history of it. So it started, China, India, Egypt, Middle East, but it was a thing that was hard to trace down. But they think that it's one of the oldest, quote unquote pseudosciences. Um, and it's still performed, especially in India and China. I always ask somebody when they get a palm reading if they've ever had it done before, because sometimes I hear really cool stories that are from other countries and things like that who do it very, very differently. So a lot of the history of it, though, and I think where it became more of a solidified art was in the 1900s, late 1800s, early 1900s. There was a couple palm readers that were really getting noticed and putting out a lot of literature on it. And that is where I, still got the basis of what I do from. I just wanted to, again, kind of put a lighter spin on it, or just make it easier, a little less overwhelming and overbearing. Because I mean, something I have to look at all the time is or if people, they don't want to believe. There's this whole thing about believing. I got to tell you, the more and more I do it, it's crazy the things that, or the stories that people tell me based on something I see in their hands. And also, I kind of choose to believe. I choose not to, you know, go down that hole of like, what if it's not real? Like, if it's working for me in this way, like, why would I even go down that rabbit hole? So, so yeah, the history, there's been a lot of really interesting people that have done. There's been females that were notable, and celebrities. A lot of celebrities have gotten their palms read. Marilyn Monroe. There's some photographs of her getting hers read, and I have not read an A-list celebrity yet, but maybe one day.
What, like, you mentioned doing like a lighter side, like what is the darker side, like what does that mean exactly?
There's things out there where you can see or tell somebody's a murderer, or has psychotic tendencies, and if they're gonna die, and or when they're gonna die. It's just something I like to say. Like, people are like, "You gonna tell me when I'm gonna die?" Like, no, but you're gonna die, right? Yeah, but it's also very interesting. There are clinical studies on the hands and how different marks have been scientifically proven to show different especially mental, um, you know, uh, mental health. So there's a line called the Simian line, also called the transverse palmar crease, which is like a one line that will cut across the hand. And it's something like 20% of children with Down syndrome have that line. Not everyone that has it has Down syndrome. My mother actually has that line, but there's other marks on the hand that have been studied. A lot of, I think, older nurses used to kind of look for that kind of thing. Well, we don't really use those things anymore. But yeah, there's a lot that you can look at. Fingerprints are supposed to hold life purpose, which is really interesting. So again, I'm really kind of fascinated with the connection between science and palmistry. Our general like markings and lines on our hands and our fingerprints are on our bodies and developed 3 months before we're born. Fingerprints never change, which is why we have forensics, and the lines do change, and they're supposed to change as we change. So I'm kind of on my own journey looking at my kid's hand because I've been doing this since she was 2. And they're very simple. But if anybody saw a picture of my hands, they're crazy. But also, my life has been crazy. I'm sure they didn't look like this when I was, that young.
If someone, like myself, who's never had my palms read,
Mm-hmm.
and was curious specifically about like doing it to help them from like a mental health perspective, like what would you say?
Can you clarify that a little bit?
I don't mean that they're going to get like treatment or anything, but like
Right.
they wanna I don't know, they're experiencing some depression, they're experiencing some pain. They want to just get to know themselves better, and they want to know themselves better.
Sure.
Like what would you tell them?
I would usually just describe my experience and the options that are out there. I do see a lot of anxiety on people's hands, and most people know right away. They're like, "Oh yeah, I'm so full of anxiety." Um,
So
but
you're actually seeing, when you look at a palm, you see markers of anxiety or
oh
depression, things
sure.
like that.
Oh yeah, for sure. Because we have a headline in the center of our hand, and that is your mental self. So if there are breaks or splits or things like that, I might talk about what happened in that part of their life, because these lines work on a timeline. So if there is a break in the line that happens at, let's say, 24 years old, I might be like, hey, did something, you know, a big decision happen or something traumatic? Did you change some things? And a lot of people will be like, yeah, that's when I had a nervous breakdown. So it's like there are these places on the hands where I'm almost giving the opportunity for people to discuss if they so choose to go there. It's crazy how accurate it can be. But if somebody came to me and they were talking about depression and things, again, non-judgmental. I am on medication. Not everybody wants to be on medication, but there's also this stigma, I feel like, that medication is so bad. But
Right.
I'm one that's like, if it works, you should do that until, you get to a point where you don't want to do it anymore. But whatever works for you, meditation, yoga, getting outside, having a support person in your life. So I don't really like to I don't like to be an advice giver, but I just usually state from my experience or my knowledge, like maybe this might be something. Is there a hobby that could really bring you through this? But mostly, I'm just there to hold space, and if it feels like a good opportunity for me to give some options, then I will. But it's all about feeling out what somebody wants, and needs in that moment.
You know what I love about it is, and I guess when I think about palm reading or things like tarot, I had Lindsay Mack on the show way back when, and she talked about like helping her trauma in doing tarot. Like tarot has helped her sort of understand her trauma and like work through her trauma. And the same thing here, right? Like palm reading or really anything. Like there are so many paths to healing and self-knowledge, and I think it's so crucial to remember that as humans, that there aren't like you said, if medication works, great. If not, yeah, there are other sources, and it could be, and it's not binary, right? It's not these like, it's not science versus religion. It's like all of these things can coexist and they can cross over, and the Venn diagram is very messy, and it's important to remember that.
Right, for sure.
Yeah. So how is palm reading in the time of a pandemic?
It's depressing because I can't really do it. So my camper that I used to take to festivals and pop-ups and all that, really in a ploy to make, it's pink and like really cute. So it was a ploy to get people to get their palms read. Like, hey, don't be scared. So that just sits outside empty a lot now. But I do remote readings, and I do about 5 a week, and they send in pictures and I mark them up and then do a Zoom call and have a conversation. Yeah. So, I feel like we're really pivoting here, but, and that has really, it has filled most of the void of, what I used to do, but I still, it's hard. It's really been hard for me to not do that anymore. Cause I would I would just work in so many different places and meet so many different people. And there's something about holding somebody's hand and having a conversation that, I think I would always get nervous before I did it. Like who am I to think I can do this? My life is so messy, blah, blah, blah. But then after hours of doing palm readings, it was just like, I was so lit up with meeting all of these people who were so open and honest and real with me. And I miss that. But these remote readings are giving me some life.
That's good.
Yeah.
So how does that work? Like they take a picture of their hand, they send it in, and then you talk about, do you send it back with the markups and all that stuff?
So because of my design background, I really use those skills to support what I'm doing. So yeah, when they make an appointment, they get sent a sheet that has, the instructions for the different photographs of the hands. I think there's like 5 photos, and they're not anything crazy. It's just like, your hand whole, your hand, the lines, the sides of your hands. And they send it in, and then I make a presentation in Photoshop. And when I do the Zoom call, I share my screen and just walk them around everything. And it's very similar to if I was doing it in person, except instead of my finger pointing it out, it's, the cursor. So I really like for people to see the visual, to see where the information is coming from. And then again, it's all about storytelling. And it's all about creating a dialogue. And I get to meet the most amazing, beautiful people doing it that I would never meet, in any other way if I wasn't doing this.
Yeah, that's true. And how much are you guys having like a long conversation before the actual palm reading?
No, we're no conversation at all. They send the photos, and the calls usually last about 30 minutes. I used to do these readings where they would send the pictures, and it was all cold reading, which means like I wouldn't have any interaction. And those are they're just, for one, they're not as fun for me. I don't get anything out of it, and I feel like I'm being tested, which it just kind of takes the fun out. I don't like saying or assuming things about people. I like to connect through it. So I don't do it that way anymore. I've really had to navigate, all these ways of palm reading and what feels right to me, and and what feels good to me, because it can be hard also to, when I'm having a really crappy day, to kind of shut myself off and give everything to, another person's energy. So,
yeah, I feel
that's been another thing to navigate too, is how many can I do and what way feels best to me, because I don't want to fall out of love with it,
Yeah. And what 2 questions. What does that cost first? What does that cost, that virtual palm reading?
Right now it's $85.
Gotcha. And what are your plans for the future? Like what does the next year look like to you?
I have no idea. No idea. I have no idea. I would love to have another chance at a publishing project, and I have ideas. Like that is one thing I do not lack is ideas, but sometimes that's not always the best thing either because you just get, then you get like frazzled. You're like, I have so many ideas. So I am doing some freelance design work right now for a publisher I used to work for, which is nice. But yeah, I'm taking it as it comes. This is a very interesting time to be an artist, and yeah, all I can do is try to figure it out by doing the breadcrumb thing, day by day.
Yeah.
I do have some cool things coming up. I'm doing a virtual art opening with Wes Bruce at the Peabody Essex Museum, where I will be reading his poem because he has a lot of hand silhouette pieces in his art exhibit. So gigs like that are something I'm hoping to have more of.
Well, the fun thing is that I mean, I don't know the numbers, but a lot of people have hands.
I think so. I think you're right. I think that could be a fact.
Yeah.
Yes.
Here's a weird question. Do you see is there any anything we can glean from lines and feet?
Yes. It's really funny. 2 years ago, I did an April Fool's joke where it was foot full of stars, and I changed my logo to a foot and put it on a really crappy old van. Some people thought I was serious, and they were like, "Oh, Helene's reading feet now." But no, and just like with like acupressure and things like that, other cultures definitely read feet. I'm not in that market yet. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Plus they stink. And,
yeah, that's kind of my main point. Like I just really don't want to look at feet.
Yeah, no, I hear you. Feet are weird.
They are weird, but they also do have marks on them.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I'm actually deeply curious. I want to pay you to read my poem because I've never had it done, and I would love to do that.
I would love to.
Cool.
Yeah.
So tell the listeners, Helene, a little bit about your book.
Sure. So it is a kit. It is called the Handful of Stars Palmistry Guidebook and Handprinting Kit, and it comes with a ink pad, an ink roller, and a silver pen, because in the back of the guidebook there are these purple pieces of paper that you tear out, and you will ink your hand onto that paper and then follow the guidebook to read your own poem. So I really tried to make it step by step, really easy process. Of course, you don't have to do the inking if you don't want to. I just really found that for a lot of people and for myself, kind of visual learning can, not just looking at your own hand. I feel like that just blows people's minds. So if you make this print, you can really sit with it and dive in. And I tried to make it really easy, really accessible and fun. So, my favorite thing is to see people, just like staring at their hands with this look of wonder on their face. And that's my intent with the book. I just want people to get this like sense of wonder of what your body could say about you. And it's really just about self-reflection, just like astrology or tarot cards or anything like that. I just think it's so special that it's a part of you.
I love that. Yeah, thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
So as we wrap up here, Helene, we always talk about empathy heroes. And so these are folks in our lives who are empathetic. They even could be characters from stories we love, novels, movies even. I'm going to go first and name my empathy hero this week to give you a moment to think about your empathy hero.
Mm-hmm.
My empathy hero this week is anyone who votes for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. I rarely get political on this show. I don't think that's a political statement, what I just said. I think our current president, in my mind, lacks empathy. He lacks compassion. He's a vile monster. So please vote, and please vote for Biden Harris. Okay,
Here.
the end.
Yes, I don't. Yeah, I'm completely with you on that. My empathy here is like I knew exactly who I was going to say when you said that. I talked about Eat, Pray, Love a lot. Elizabeth Gilbert and Glennon Doyle. So Elizabeth Gilbert, the author of Eat, Pray, Love, but she has lived lived her life in such a beautiful, creative and vulnerable way and she just talks so openly and sweetly. I think she's amazing. There's no veil to who she is, even though she's, had New York Times bestsellers and all these things. And then Glennon Doyle, kind of same situation. She's, and it's funny, they're both authors. But Glennon Doyle had a similar situation in her book Love Warrior. It was all about her going through the process of figuring out if she was going to get divorced from a man, and in the end, they stayed together. But now she is married to a famous soccer player, female.
Abby Wambach.
Exactly, and I want to read her book too. But just again, vulnerable, open, honest. There's no veil to who they are, and I just find that so inspiring.
Yeah, they are wonderful. I read Glennon's latest book. It was amazing.
Like everybody has read that, Untamed.
Untamed, yeah, it's great. It's wonderful.
I think it's been the number one in the country for a while now. It's incredible.
Yeah, both of those people are on my dream guest list.
Oh
for
yeah,
this show. Yeah.
Let's make it happen for you.
Yeah, I mean,
I listen.
Right. All right. Anyways, Helene, where can the listeners connect with you, buy your book, all that stuff?
I say Instagram is my main jam, and that is handful of stars _ readings. I post pretty frequently, and I'm pretty personal in there. My website's handfulofstarsreading.com, and the book is available everywhere. But if somebody was going to buy it, I would definitely steer them towards indie bookstores right now.
Yeah. Bookshop.org is a great one. You can buy books through, and all of them, any purchase supports local bookstores. So I recommend that. Or IndieBound is a great source for supporting local bookstores. Yeah. Well, thank you, Helene, for being a part of You Me Empathy. I really appreciate the work you do, and I'm excited to get my poem read.
Yes, let's do that. Thank you so much for having me again. This was great.
Oh, you're very welcome. And to you listeners, as I always say, I'm here, you're here, we're here together on this wayward, overwhelming, awe-inspiring pale blue dot. We have each other. It's You, Me, Empathy.